A deputy principal accused of the rape of a pupil at a school in Bronkhorstspruit, east of Pretoria, is due back in court this morning. The 53-year-old man faces 3 counts related to the rape of an 8-year-old pupil. It's alleged that he raped the child on 3 occasions between June of last year and August this year. Parents are also accusing the school of a cover-up. Newzroom Afrika's Nqobile Madlala is on the story. She joins us now live. Nqobile, it is an infuriating story. Just yesterday we were talking about teachers and sexual harassment in schools, and now this.
Yes, indeed, very infuriating. In fact, a lot of community members have gathered here. They were just in court just shortly, where we saw some of the private attorney that was representing the 53-year-old, basically just saying that she's asking for leave to appeal. So now there's a new attorney that is coming in, but the community are really just wanting answers, and they're not alone. We've also seen some representative in terms of political representative, and that's why now I'm joined by DA's Helen Ziller to speak to us about this. And just to start off, why do you see it fit to come here and show your support, Helen?
Because this is an issue that should exercise every South African very deeply and very profoundly. We have a law called the Children's Act. The Children's Act requires steps to be taken to protect vulnerable children against older predators, mostly men, who are much older than these children and who abuse them sometimes sexually. Now, in this case, the allegation is that a 53-year-old deputy principal of a school was guilty on at least 3 occasions of raping an 8-year-old child on the school premises. Now, every single South African must understand that this is a most horrific allegation. We must presume that he's innocent until he's found guilty, but in such a case, we have to make sure that the law is taking its course. If anybody suspects that a child is being abused, they have a duty to report it to a specific authority or capable structure that is able to report it to the police, and the police are obliged to investigate. Because an adult man having sex with an 8-year-old is rape, is the most extreme form of abuse, because an 8-year-old can't give consent, especially with her deputy principal involved. So these kinds of things should worry every single South African. School is mandatory. Every parent has to send their child to school. We send our children to school or our grandchildren to school, believing there are safe spaces in which our children will be cared for and looked after and protected by their teachers. And when you have 8-year-olds who are abused in such a way, this child didn't even tell her mother. It was only when her mother saw that she was having difficulty walking this child that the mother asked what went wrong, and then the child told her. This child was keeping this thing quiet and silent, probably threatened by the older man, living in terror and fear, scarred for life, at least psychologically, probably physically as well. We have a duty to stand up for these children and to bring every perpetrator to justice, and to make sure that we do not have sexual predators in our schools with children.
Thank you very much on that, Helen. But we also know one of the cases that are currently being opened is the inquest on the Steve Biko case. And we know that you were on the ground then as a journalist and very instrumental in terms of looking at what happened. Can you perhaps give us a reaction in terms of what do you think how this will work out?
Well, I'm very pleased that the inquest is being reopened. At the time, although there was an inquest, and although a lot of the horrific details did come out in that inquest, I don't think the truth was told. I don't think the role of the policeman was adequately interrogated. I don't think that they were sufficiently asked to account for why they should not be charged with murder, especially as they should have known that with the brutality that was dished out to Steve Biko that he would have died. The way they treated him when he was unconscious, stripping him of all his dignity, that detail coming out in the inquest, and then the magistrate Martinez Prince saying no one could be found to blame for his death. That was a travesty of justice. And even though it is all these years later, 40 years later, it is still absolutely essential that the truth gets told, because the truth matters in history, and we need to learn a lot of lessons from our history in this country.
Do you think that the truth will come out?
Yes, I do. Even on the evidence that was before the original inquest, if that was interrogated properly, I'm sure an objective court would come to a different opinion.
And in terms of accountability, Helen, what do you think, what kind of accountability can be taken out of this?
Well, most of the people who were involved in that murder are dead. So Stradom is dead. I remember his name. He was the commander of that group. There was a Gideon Nieuwoud. There were various others involved in the assault on Steve Biko. There were also the doctors who were derelict in their duty to care for a prisoner, as they should have done. And even though they're dead, I do think that their names need to go down in history as having been part of the murder apparatus of apartheid.
And lastly, in cases like this, how important is it for the truth to come out?
Well, the truth is the only thing we have. That's what we stand up for, that's what we fight for, that's what we hold power to account for. And if you have the truth, you can learn from it and find ways to ensure that it never happens again, to make sure that the checks and balances work, to make sure that the laws of the country protect the vulnerable, and to make sure that when people violate those laws, they are held to account.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. That's Helen Ziller from the DA, also here outside to ensure that the truth around that case of the 8-year-old who we understand was assaulted by a 53-year-old does come out, that the truth in that also comes out. They are going to be sitting in on that case.